Hey everyone, it's Nightharo here, and today I got a guide for you for veteran Dreadsail Reef, the Reef Guardian. So I've tried this fight a whole bunch of different ways, and I was going to put out a video like a week ago, but I've decided that, you know what, I need to try something else, and I think what I've landed on is the best way to do this. It's pretty efficient. It might be one of the most efficient ways besides simply stacking and burning if you got a lot of DPS. And the second thing is, I also think it might be the easiest way. And that's my goal, to make it the easiest possible. So I do believe this is pretty much one of the easiest ways that you can do this fight. There are some that are easier, maybe on the tanks or something like that. Maybe that you don't have to move very much or whatever. But I think in aggregate, I think this is the easiest way to do this fight. So as pretty much always, there'll be timestamps below. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the fight, positioning, things you want to know, etc. And then kind of a raid leads perspective, if you will. Then a little bit later on, I will go through the tank perspective, DPS, and a healer perspective. And those are a little bit lighter, just depending on what the role is. The main thing in this fight is going to be for the tanks and for the DPS downstairs. But anyways, enough preamble. Just want to let you know the structure of the video. Let's go ahead and get into it, and let's talk about this fight. Okay, before we walk through the fight, let's go ahead and talk about a few of the mechanics, or all the mechanics really you're going to have to really worry about. So first off, the main boss is basically like a Russian nesting doll, okay? So you do DPS to it, and then at about 80%, I believe, 80, 85, it'll split off, and it'll make a second one. And then at 50%, it does that again. And then the smaller ones will make even more, and you kind of get the idea. Now, it doesn't go on forever. Some of them will not split, and they'll just die, but you get kind of the rough idea that one boss begets two bosses, and so on and so forth. And so that can be a problem with your tanks if they have too many of them. Generally, it's not too big of a deal. Now, the next thing you're going to worry about, mainly for the DPS and healers, although the tanks do need to worry about it as well, is you'll get lightning strikes. So if you finish the first boss and you went to the right side, you'll notice that the lightning strikes happen, puts a dot on you, it ticks up over time, you get more lightning strikes, it does more damage, and so periodically you need to go cleanse. And so to do that, you just need to stand under an awning. Okay, so you go into the awning, you can tell that it's delineated here by this little bit of lightning. This lightning doesn't hurt you, it's not an AoE, it's just showing you like, hey, this is the cleanse area, so inside of it and outside of it. So you just need to go stand under it for like a couple of seconds, and then you can move out again, okay? You don't need to let it tick all the way off while you're under the awning. As long as you don't get another lightning strike during the time period that it's still active, it'll tick off after a few seconds. So if you're on console, just stay under there for like 2 or 3 seconds, and then you should be good to go. Now, when you move under the awning, you're going to have, just like when you came through after the first boss, if you went to the left side first, you had all the mushrooms there. And you have one mushroom that will cause smaller ones to spawn that actually cause the AoE. The large mushroom is just kind of telling you where the radius that it'll be active is at. And then what will happen if you keep that large mushroom active for too long, it'll start spawning 2 AoEs. And then eventually 3 AoEs and 4 AoEs. So if you stay by this and use the same cleansing area during the entire fight, it ends up with like 4 or 5 AoEs at once, and people can start to die from poison during that time. The method I'm going to show you today, you're not going to need to worry about the poison. You'll just need to cleanse the stacks periodically, and it'll be very easy because it's going to be on your way as part of the deal. Now, the next thing you need to worry about is that there's a portal mechanic. And the way it works out, you'll see the map here. You can see that on the map, there's 6 holes in the ground. Now, if you look at the downstairs map, you'll see that these 6 areas are related to the 6 areas upstairs. So these areas, and then there's a pathway connecting them. Now, this is a one-way street, okay? So basically what you have here is you have 3, that's what these directional arrows are telling you. You have 3 different paths you could go on, and then you can go once, and then you can go down again to the other area. And again, that corresponds, and I'll overlay them here and kind of go back and forth. So you can kind of see how they respond. So what happens is you'll have to have DPS come down. They'll have to go one of these 3 directions, go to the first area, and then move to the second area and DPS something down. I'll go into that more in depth in the DPS section. And that's pretty much it for this fight. Now let's go ahead and walk through an actual fight. So I'm going to show you a main tank perspective on this fight. Now here we are going to get a little confusion, and the other tank is going to grab taunt. Not a big deal. That was just an accident. But throughout the rest of the fight, this is the main tank perspective that I'm giving you. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to taunt the first Reef Guardian, and then you're going to move over by the crown symbol. Okay, and the crown symbol is going to be the first one in the path, And you see here I had to take taunt, and everybody's just DPSing the boss, not a big deal. Now he spawns a second one, that's the nesting doll thing. You can see I take taunt on that one, and the easiest thing to do is to have the one tank grab all of the main bosses, or at least two of them. If there's three, it might be good to have an off tank grab the other one. If your tank is new, you could potentially guard them if you wanted to. I don't think it's entirely necessary, but it's something you could do. And then you see that when the first, I'm going to call those reefs, whenever the first reef spawns, two ads show up, and you see a Sencha and a bear both spawn. And so you can just have the main tank or off tank, either one is fine. Whoever's free can grab it. Eventually, probably you want the main tank. It's easiest for them to grab it, and that way they can stack it all together. But again, if your tanks are new or whatever, you're having problems, it's not a terrible idea to have the off tank go ahead and grab it for them. Now, you see here, we're just stacking them all, and we're leaving them right there and burning them. And then what happens is another one procs, and the boss goes over to the chalice. Okay, and then I still have one more of the smaller bosses that has spawned. Now, I hate to do this to you, to say, hey, do something different than what I just showed you. But if your tanks are new, what you want to do is, as soon as the first one spawns, you move to the second one. And then once that one, that reef activates, then you move to the third, and so on and so forth. We actually stay stacked until the first two proc, because I'm comfortable with holding them. I know how to stack the AoEs, and I've done this fight more times than I care to remember. So we're just holding them and burning them. That's a totally fine strategy. If your tank is very comfortable with stacking the AoEs, that's totally fine. If they're not, as soon as that first reef procs, go ahead and move to the second one, and you'll see that throughout the rest of this that's what we do. We keep moving, and then you don't end up with more than 5 AoEs on the ground, which is how many that happen each time they start to spew. And so you won't have to worry about the tank running out of room or not knowing where to put the boss or the ad or whatever, and it becomes a lot easier, okay? Especially if you have two tanks and one of them's holding the ads, one of them's holding the boss, just move to the next one. And during this phase, you can honestly, once you get this down, I think you could easily one tank this, and it wouldn't be a big deal. But again, just have the other tank grab all the ads, and that's kind of what we're doing here. So every time a reef spawns, two ads, you see them there, the bear and the cat are going to spawn. And then again, when you're moving, your tank is moving from point A to point B. What you want to do is make sure your tank doesn't have on bracing anchor, that they have on celerity, which gives them a speed buff. Those are both CPs. And then the third thing is, I would say, some sort of speed boost. Here I'm using Race Against Time because I'm a Necromancer. A Warden's Wings would work fine. DK Chain. You don't need anything crazy. You just need some sort of boost. I mean, if you had a Nightblade giving you a refreshing path, that would probably be enough. And then you see I just take off running, and you don't take any damage. If you have celerity so that you're faster, you don't have bracing anchor to slow you down, you can just take off running at a sprint, pop your speed boost, and you'll be totally fine. You don't even have to, once you're away, you don't have to worry about them hitting you at all. If you're worried about them one-shotting you when you first turn around, just dodge roll away and then take off sprinting, and you'll be just fine. And then here, Clancy had the other ad, so he's just hanging on to it. I'm kind of like, I don't know what to do. I should have a boss or something. So this is the kind of thing where we kind of flopped roles because we were a little bit confused. But all you got to do is the off tank. That's basically the perspective I'm giving you now. Is I'm waiting for the last reef that was active to finish, and that boss will become active again. So that's what he did. I went and taunted him, even though he's not anywhere near me. I do have taunt on him. And then I'm just grabbing the ads so that they can be stacked with the boss whenever he gets to me. And then I'm moving to the next reef, or the hole in the ground where the reef is at. And then that's all you're doing. And again, we're fighting for taunt because we're a little bit confused on like, wait, who's grabbing what? But hopefully you won't have that kind of problem, so it won't be that big of a deal. And then you can see they split again. No big deal. On the splits, okay, I wouldn't worry about who's splitting, when, what health percentages, except for one. The one thing I would worry about is that the main boss, when he first spawns, he will split at, I think, 80. It might be 85, but 80%, we're going to call it 80, and 50%. After that, he doesn't split again. And at that point, I would just DPS him down. Okay, so once he split twice, I would just make sure to go ahead and kill him. The worst case scenario is you have to do a few more reefs that you wouldn't have otherwise had to do if you don't DPS the right guy down. A lot of times when, at least in my experience, when we're trying to like burn one of them, we don't get there in time. And he procs on a reef and he's got like 2% health, and it's just whatever. It's not that big a deal. Don't worry about it. You might have to do a couple extra reefs. They're not too bad. And with this method, you only need 2 teams doing reefs. So you have a lot of DPS upstairs. And that's all we're doing. Again, I don't know what's going on here. Every time one procs, I go, okay, we're going to the next one. And then I take off running once I got taunt on everything. Make sure you grab taunt on the ads. And then the off tank is making sure that whatever Reef Guardians are becoming active again from way in the back, that he has taunt on them. And then he's pulling them into group. And then I'm grabbing taunt off of them so that they can all be stacked very easily. And we don't have to worry about one tank dropping the AoEs in a bad spot for the other tank or whatever. That's what we're doing. That's all that's going on here. And the DPS and the healers, you just run from point A to point B. You see the big yellow circle in the background. That's where you cleanse your stacks. And the DPS and the healers and tanks, everybody really, you're going to naturally run through those areas. And you'll see here, I got like 23 stacks or something. I'm hanging out in it. My stacks are gone. Cool. I can keep going. As a tank, about 20 stacks is all you want. You don't really want too many more than that. You can, but you probably don't want too many more than that. As a DPS or a healer, 4 or 5, definitely at 9, you want to be cleansing. And again, you kind of run by those areas. So basically, if you just take every opportunity when you're running by one to go cleanse, I think it should generally be enough for you. If you're worried at all, just go cleanse early, and it's not that big of a deal. You just got to run into the mushroom area and then come back out after a couple of seconds, and it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now, for the console folks out there, and maybe somebody who's watching this video can help me. I can't figure out what the visual looks like, and it might be that I've been playing with the fun polymorph. I don't know what it is that tells you how many stacks you have besides the in-game. You can set up your buffs and debuffs, and it's usually on the far right in that situation. But I don't know if there's usually a visual cue of some sort, and I don't know what it is if there is one for the lightning stacks. So it might be that there's not one. It might be that I just don't know what it is. But if you know what it is, please drop it in the comments below, and I will pin it so that other people can know. All right. And then that's all we're doing here, guys. We're just rinsing, repeating. Every time one of the reefs procs, we move to the next one, and we just keep going from point A to point B. And then you'll see here at the end, the last Reef Guardian is still alive, but he's procced, and we actually have to backtrack. That's all you do. At the end, if there's one guy, last guy alive, you just run back to him and DPS him in place, and he'll die pretty quickly. And that's it. That's all there is to it. This method is really forgiving. We tried a bunch of different ways. Like I said, we tried leapfrogging. We tried holding them in one place. Originally, that felt the easiest for me, and now I'm convinced that I think this is the best way. So, that's pretty much it. Now, let's go ahead and move on, and let's talk about some other perspectives of that of a tank, DPS, and then a healer. All right, so let's say you're a main tank. First thing you do, you taunt the boss, you pull him over. You want to pull him over by the crown. That's where you always want to start him. And there's kind of an area that honestly is big and open and kind of feels like it's made for that. Now, here you'll see that Clancy is the other tank, and he dies. And I'm not sure what he dies to. Maybe he didn't move out of one of the AoEs quick enough. But do you see the pattern on the ground, the way he's dropped those 4 AoEs? That is what I would recommend that you do in general. Okay, so when he starts to spew, when you see the boss start to spew, I step really close to him, get as close as I can, and then what'll happen is he'll drop an AoE centered on you after a second. And then I usually move to the right or left. It doesn't matter which one, whatever works for you with the space you're in. And then the second AoE will drop. You need to move out of the AoEs as fast as you can while still holding block. Okay, you can still be holding block, but move out. If you're slow, you'll see here that I'm slow in one of these, and the AoE drops, and I don't move immediately. I actually bar swap, and the reason I bar swap is so that I'll move a little bit faster. You could also just drop block for a second and move out. But you don't, if you want to move out as fast as you possibly can, and you need to be moving the second the ground AoE drops. So if it drops for a second and you didn't move and you realize that, you either need to drop block and move quickly out of the way, or alternatively, you could dodge roll, and I do that as well. But you drop one right where you're at, move to the right, drop another one, then back up and drop the third one, move back to your left or right, whichever way you came from originally, and drop the fourth. And then you can either move back a little bit further or move further to the left or right, whichever direction you happen to be close towards. and drop the fifth one, and then you should be good. Now, again, doing this method, you shouldn't have to deal with more than 5 of these AoEs typically in one place, okay? Generally speaking, that shouldn't be the issue. Now, you see here that I have a ton, right? Because there's 2 of them, and they're both doing the thing, and we're leaving them both stacked up here. So again, as a tank, you could just move to the next reef as soon as this first one was procced, and you wouldn't have to worry about this. The off tank, when they split, could grab that one and just go ahead and take it to the next reef and hold it there for you. Okay, that's what you could do. And then once your guy procs on the crown, everybody else runs to the off tank's guy, and you grab the ads and bring them over to the off tank. But again, I have experience doing this, so I just hold them all here, and we don't move until the chalice is procced. So the crown will proc, and then the chalice. We have a third guy. At that point, I take off running because we want to make sure that the next thing that procs is in order going clockwise around the arena. You don't necessarily need to know what they are, but it can be helpful. So this is actually going to be crossbones, I believe, and then the next one after that will be skull. And then I just put them right there. And all you're doing when you move around here is you're trying to not move the boss. That is your goal. And the cool thing is their hitbox is big enough that if when they start to do the AoE, you step close to them, you can then just kind of move back. So you can kind of do like a square and then square +1. Wherever you want to drop that fifth AoE doesn't really matter. And as I mentioned, we kind of messed up with our taunt here, who's grabbing what. But typically, when it procs, you as the main tank can grab these ads. If the off tank doesn't have anything to do, if they have time or whatever, that's the way your group want to do it, they could grab it and bring it to you. It doesn't really matter. It's not too bad. But again, honestly, you just pop some sort of speed boost. You've got celerity giving you 10% bonus speed anyways. You're not using bracing anchor because that'll slow you down, and you take off running, and then you can kind of turn around and taunt the ads from afar. So the boss is still trying to chase after you and you're taunting the ads that are just now spawning. The ads spawn and they don't do anything for a couple of seconds. There's a window there that feels like it's designed for you to be able to grab taunt before they move too much. And that's pretty much it. The main thing for the tanks here in this one, and you see here I actually remember I should grab these ads. Okay, just like that. That's all you got to do. The main thing is that when the AoEs are dropping, you absolutely need to make sure that you move out of them as quickly as you possibly can. The other thing I would tell you is that the cat isn't a big deal. The bear, when it does its heavy attack, it hits pretty hard, okay? So I've got a pretty survivable build here. I've got a few things up, but I would typically dodge roll the bear's heavy attacks, especially if you're on a class with a little bit less mitigation, like a warden or something. Or if you're on a class with a shield, just make sure you pop your shield for that heavy attack, and it won't be too big of a deal. Now here again, you see we've got 3 guys here all stacked up at once. That's a situation where you might want the off tank to be holding one of these ads. And then you see, they both start spraying on me, but we get kind of lucky and it procs, and I just take off running, and we don't really have to worry about it. But if you get 3 guys stacked up and there starts to be a bunch of AoEs and stuff like that, you can take a couple of the guys, or have the off tank take one of the guys and move to the next one ahead of you, and then you wait there for that next one to proc. But in general, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And if you guys have issues, please let me know in the comments down below. If you're like, hey, Nightharo, I did this and it didn't work out like that for me. I haven't tried this extensively, although I have tried it several times. I haven't tried it with super low DPS, for example. This is decent DPS here with this group, but not anything insane or crazy or anything like that where you just burn strats or anything like that. So, and that's pretty much it for the tank. Again, it's not the cone that does any damage to you. It is the ground AoEs. So just as soon as they pop up, move out of them. If you fail to do that, if you don't notice it at first, go ahead and drop block and move out quickly, or dodge roll. Both are fine. And you can dodge roll through the AoEs. And you see here, actually, I'll cut to the very beginning. You see I dodge roll into an AoE, and then I dodge roll again. Remember that you're immune for like half a second after you finish dodge rolling. And so you can be standing in AoE for like half a second, and then I just dodge roll immediately again to get fully out of the AoEs. And I do have to move the boss a little bit. Moving the boss is not ideal, but it's not, it's a small price to pay to keep yourself alive. Make sure you're staying alive first and foremost, and then worry about everything else after that. And just so you guys know, I am doing shorts, a lot of them for tanks, and I will do shorts on how to drop these AoEs. So if you want, you can save it, keep it somewhere, and you can kind of look at it for reference and be like, okay, wait, how do you do this again? And you can just watch like a, anywhere from like a 20 to 30 second short, maybe a minute. They can't be longer than that anyways, of how to do this. And then, you can watch it on loop and repeat. So you can kind of really get an idea in your head of exactly how to do it. So here I have video of a older strat that we were doing, okay? And so we were doing something stationary where we stayed there. There are problems with that. I don't recommend it. I won't go into it now though. So all we're doing, we're DPSing, and then my reef heart gets called, okay? My reef gets called, and it's my team's turn to go down. Now the method I'm showing you here, you only need 2 teams of 2. You could have 3 if you wanted. Generally, I would say just 2 is more than enough. I can basically solo one of these, and I parse like 90K on this character. So just, do the math. If you have 2 characters that parse 45K, they can do it. Shouldn't be too much of a problem. You could send a third if you had really low DPS. And all you're going to do, you take off running. You need to go to the central area here and just go to whatever area is closest to get to the main, to like jump down into the water. And then what's going to happen is you jump down to the water. There might be some ways you can kind of tweak this. I haven't figured it out just yet, but you jump down to the water, it'll start sending you around in a circle. And then what's going to happen is that there'll be some of these symbols will be lit up. You still need to know which one you need to go to because there might be different ones procced at the same time, but look for the symbol that you're going for. And then hit X, the synergy button. It will take you then down that path. Now, this is just like the lazy river when you went to the boss on the left side, the mini boss on the left side. These are one-way streets, okay? So once you take that synergy, there's no going back. And what happens is even if you jump up to the top and try to reset, there's a 40-second timer where you can't go back. So if you accidentally go the wrong way, you need to go ahead and call for backup. And again, doing this strategy, you're only having 4 people typically do portals, so you can have several backups. You can even have half the DPS, the other half of the DPS be your backup. Now, once you get into this area, you're going to see that there's a crab and then there is the reef heart. So you're going to go ahead and tab onto the reef heart and then just start DPSing it. Ignore the crab and just kill it with AoEs, okay? That's all you need to do is kill it with AoEs and just parse it down. Now, periodically, it will do a conal attack. This is the same conal attack basically as upstairs that the main tanks have to worry about. The main thing is that when you see that cone, get out of it. It's not going to move with you like it does with the tanks. Just get out of it as quickly as you can. Dodge rolling is fine. If you have multiple people, it will spawn multiple cones, and so you run out of room a little bit quicker. But again, the cone itself is actually not the problem. The problem is the ground dots that it drops. Those ground dots you do not want to ever be in. If you go in those, 1 tick will probably kill you, okay? So if it drops the circles, and I accidentally wander into one here, I'll try to pop up some video, and it kills me pretty quickly, okay? So just don't stand in those circles. I don't know how else to say it. And DPS the heart, and then periodically the crab will heavy attack you. Just look for the sparkles that it has. That's typical for any heavy attack, is that there's some sort of telegraph, and that's what it is. The add-ons like ding here and pop up and tell you to dodge or whatever, but just look, DPS the reef heart, it's not moving while staring at the crab. And then as soon as you see any kind of sparkles like it's going to heavy attack you, just go ahead and dodge roll and you'll be just fine. It's not that big a deal. If you're, beefy enough, I think you could just hold block through it and then heal yourself. You do want to self-heal for down here, but generally it's not a problem. Keep one on your bar and use it if you need it. Now, what will happen with this method is once you finish with 1 reef heart, you'll have a second one. So both of you will go to the second reef heart, and then here you see we failed. You'll have a second one you'll go to, DPS that down, and then once the second one is dead, you just hit the synergy button and pop back up to the top, and you're good. And then you just wait. After 40 seconds, a message will pop up, and you can go back down again. Again, it's 40 seconds between coming up before you can go back down again. 2 teams is more than enough for the strategy I am showing you. Now, if you're just hanging out and you're DPSing upstairs, that's all you got to do. Just hang out, DPS the boss, and then cleanse your stacks periodically. Again, if you don't have the add-ons because you're on Xbox, just periodically when the boss is moving from point A to point B. Or you can count the lightning strikes. It's another way to do it. Just go stand under the awning for about 2 to 3 seconds. I would do 3 seconds if you don't have a timer. If you do have the timer, just keep an eye on it. You can actually move out as long as you don't get struck by lightning, which you won't as soon as you move out. It takes a couple of seconds. You will have no problems cleansing your stacks, and you don't have to worry about dying. If you are keeping track of your stacks, you don't want more than 9. You're getting into one-shot territory at about 9. I typically tell my groups to cleanse at like 4 or 5 just to be safe. With this strategy, honestly, if you can DPS the boss from inside that area, you're probably fine to do so. Now, you want to be careful you don't get too many poison stacks, but again, doing this method, it really just shouldn't be an issue for you. You would almost have to try. And then, yeah, you just follow the main tank. Every time one of these reefs procs, you just follow the tank as he moves it to the next one, and you don't really have to worry about anything. If you get any ads on you, just pull them over to the tank. The main tank or off tank will pull them off you. If the bear goes to heavy attack, make sure you dodge roll it, and you should be just fine. Now, as for the healers, there's honestly not really anything different. Now, I may have mentioned briefly earlier that we did try a method where we leapfrogged, so one tank moves to the next one. I also mentioned that if at the very beginning here, whenever they're splitting off, just to avoid there being too many AoEs in that first area, you can go ahead and have one of the tanks move one of the bosses, whichever one they have, to the next hole where the reef is at. What you would do in that situation, if you do that, is just send one healer with them. And what you can do is just say, okay, you're healing so-and-so, and the other healer, you're healing so-and-so. And they just stay with that tank the entire time. But again, after that first one, everybody should generally be able to stay together. And so both healers can be healing the group and the main tank. The off tank might have to go back and grab ads. They might have to go back and grab one of the bosses when the reef is done. However, they should be range taunting, and they should also have the same setup as the main tank where they're built for speed. So none of those ads or bosses should even be able to get within range of them to do any damage until they're already with the group, okay? Again, unless you have to do the leapfrog method because there's too many AoEs, you got 3 of the bosses up at one time, and that's totally fine. So just keep that in mind. Probably best for safety is to say, hey, I'm healing so-and-so, you heal so-and-so. And, obviously you heal everybody else, but that's who you're focused on, and that's who you keep an eye on and follow around if they go somewhere else. And that is it for this fight, guys. You just, keep running from reef to reef. Each time they proc, move to the next one. Make sure you're cleansing your stacks along the way. And then, I guess one more thing, I should have said this for the DPS. DPS, healers, if the tank messes up or they have AoEs everywhere, they absolutely cannot stay in those AoEs. There might be a situation where they have to turn the boss around towards the group. Okay, if they need to do that, they should say swinging the cone. Okay, they should just call it out. Hey, I'm swinging the cone. And if they call that, everybody dodge roll backwards, move out of the way. The cone doesn't go for very far, so stop DPS for a couple of seconds, move out of range of the cone, let the tank do whatever they need to do, point the boss towards the group, and then move it after a second. That's totally fine. Let the tank do that, and you guys just move back, and it shouldn't be a problem. The tank has a very hard job here, okay, with those AoEs, so cut them a break and do what you can to help, okay? Don't expect them to be perfect every single time. Just realize they're doing the best they can, and if they need to swing the cone, it shouldn't be too much to ask for you guys to move out of the way. And that is it for this fight, guys. I hope this was helpful. I noticed that, we were doing pretty good on this, at least in some groups that I've been in recently. And then, we started having some problems because it's a little bit more confusing. Maybe we get some newer people in. I think this way is the best and simplest way. I know that some groups have been moving them and the tanks just slowly walk back. I don't recommend that. I think this is easier. You just take off running, move to the next point, hold them stationary. Once it procs, do the same thing. Take off running to the next one and just move from one to the other, and don't try to DPS or do anything fancy in between the holes where the reefs are. And that's it for this fight, guys. So if this was helpful, you know what to do. Give it a thumbs up, give it a like, drop a comment below. And if you want to see other guides like this, I do guides on different topics. I'm starting to do a little bit of DPS. I've done a lot of tank stuff, a little bit of healer stuff, and I'm trying to just get more videos out. If you want to see more of what I'm coming out with, definitely hit the subscribe button, and please share this video with your friends if you found it helpful. But that's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.